So, to continue part 2 on our finalization of the Abramelin process, or as Abramelin outlines the process, the interesting thing is, after all of the things that he describes and after all of the work that it says that you can do, Abramelin, or Abraham, as relaying the work of Abramelin, also explains that you do not actually need to use the magic squares to get in touch with these powers. It's interesting because it is a system, although it is a grimoire, and it does actually invoke or get in touch with individual either entities, which this has always been very unclear in the metaphysical world as to whether or not the entities are specific intelligences independent of ourselves, which of course everything on one level is all connected, but as far as the consciousness, for example, the Holy Guardian Angel is not interpreted as a entity separate from us, so to speak, except in a spiritual, metaphysical form. It's considered one and as us from the beginning throughout everything, almost like our true spirit guide on the other side. And that's the thing, is with metaphysics these days, we've become very convoluted in our vocabulary. Arcanum is something that was an effort to really clarify and unify a lot of that. It's a very interesting process, and there's very little ceremonialism involved. At one point we will do a video on the ceremonial process of it, but first we'll be actually dealing, for the celebration of the 31st anniversary in December, we just absolutely have to celebrate, commemorate, and just completely, quote unquote, rip apart and devour the Necronomicon, which was by a popular request, specifically it being if anything of any of the works out there, to be a Mardukite grimoire, Simon's Necronomicon by far stands as the epitome of it. And it is interesting that the editors of this Abramelin edition actually mention the Necronomicon in their introduction, and it's an idea since it's been put forth. And by that, because some people will be like, oh, which version are they referring to? Well, there is only one worthwhile version as far as from the true metaphysical perspective of practical application. I mean, anything Lovecraftian is definitely, there's nothing really usable there except to fill your consciousness with a mythos. But and other works along the way have been more about it than actually anything practical. And since we're on the topic, I think one of the biggest people's issues is they have a hard time separating the Lovecraftian from the Simonian, for that matter, versions of the Necronomicon. They look for parallels because of the name, and that's probably one of the biggest issues that the book has had as far as reaching a mainstream in terms of, well, it definitely hit the mainstream in terms of the market, but as far as acceptability, because honestly it is more apt for you to find a copy in the typical Barnes & Noble, B. Dalton, Walden's Books type of store than in a lot of New Age stores, which don't always delve into that side or treat it as a book as a dark book, which if analyzed in truth, self-honesty, and with some wit from the research to be done is it's actually quite the opposite in a, for example, Mardukite hand or whatnot. So it's something to be looked at in self-honesty. For example, some of the things that it's been accused of in the past of being a book to, to secretly get people to recruit to worship the ancient ones, or the more draconian side that was against the elder gods like Marduk and whatnot in that version of the mythos. It actually does what it does at the very end is describe those processes, so that one magician will be able to recognize when such are being used, because sometimes you really do need to know your enemy's system to be able to understand it, go above and beyond it, to be able to see the big picture. Never stay limited to a system, never stay within the box. At this point, we will deter from the Abramelin process as far as the outline, the analyzation of it. We will get into much later the actual processes of consecrating using the squares and whatnot, but as far as the devotion of the daily life, the actual practical application of all the work up to that point, which is very, very important if you're going to use that system. And I really wouldn't put a time frame on it. I wouldn't limit yourself to a time frame. I think the difference between, or the idea between the 6 and the 18 months difference as far as the initiatory process, it just kind of reflects the mentality of the shortcuts. Many grimoires make it seem like, you pick it up, utter a few words, and there you go, you're off doing the stuff. And the Book of Abramelin does not succumb to that, does not delude the operator into believing that they're going to be able to control these forces absolutely overnight with very little training, very little self-discipline and whatnot. Especially, for example, the applications of the Abramelin. To speak a little bit about the magic of it, each of the operations is supposed to take 3 days. The reason being is that the operator is meant to kind of meditate on the desire, the goal, enough to know that this is something I want, this is something for my higher good, things like that. Whereas a lot of times most magic is aimed at the immediate gratification, the immediate attainment of something without really any regard whether or not it's good or bad for us. It's what we want, we go after it. So this system is, I guess, designed with some safeguards in mind concerning that. So it'll be interesting to see if anyone else follows suit with their own interpretations of the Abramelin process or experiments that they've had with it. Because I think this is a perfect forum to do that, to really bring things like this to light and to life, especially with the transitions that we're going through as a global consciousness, as a world, as everybody as one. It's interesting to see what people are doing these days. So just give a shout, give a video response, say hey. And we will talk to you soon on some other matters.